Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Go Beyond. My name is Alyssa Robinson, and I am the digital strategist here at Treach, and I am with our senior pastor, Reverend Daniel Humbert. And we come together every Monday and Wednesday for Go Beyond to dig deeper into the message from Sunday, ask some follow-up questions, have some fun conversation about what we're learning together as a church. And this week, was all about change. What are you going to change? And our focus scripture for the week is actually my favorite verse, Romans 12:2, which is, do not be conformed by the patterns of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your minds. And I wanted to talk a little bit more about this verse and ask a question about it because many people interpret do not conform to the patterns of this world as do not be a part of this world. We hear the saying, be in the world, not of the world. And you and I have had conversations about this. We have private Christian sports leagues, Christian schools, Christian activity centers, Christian drama groups, all of these things where we're kind of separating ourselves from the rest of the world. And I want to know from you, what does do not conform to the patterns of this world really mean? Does it mean separate yourself from the world?
Yeah. Well, the short answer is no. It doesn't mean separating yourself from the world. We would sort of defeat the purpose of being a follower of Jesus, I think, because Jesus wants us to interface with all kinds of people and in all kinds of ways. And so to conform to the ways of the world, if you will, simply means don't follow the cultural norms. Don't be like everybody else. Don't do the same kinds of things as everybody else. And the way I render that is we've got kind of this guideline, I reckon, from the Apostle Paul that says the fruit of the Spirit are love and joy, peace and patience and kindness and gentleness and faithfulness and self-control, and that those are kind of the guidelines for followers of Jesus. And the world or the culture doesn't really abide by most of those. Certainly the culture can abide by some of those things, but generally speaking, we don't as a people, and so I think to not be conformed means be more patient, be more loving, be more joy filled, be more generous, right? Be more gentle in the ways in which we live. And I happen to believe that if we'll do that, at least make a good effort towards that, man, that helps to transform us. And I believe, and certainly we do here at Treach believe that we can help transform the culture actually if we'll do that, if we'll all do that. So that's kind of the
Well,
way I look at it.
and of course, being transformed by the renewing of your mind is all about change, and it's very internal.
Mhm.
And focusing and reflecting on how I see the world and how I interact with the world. So, with this idea of transformation and change, for you, what is the biggest thing that you need to change that distracts you from a relationship with God?
Yeah, well, I look at this kind of in two ways. One is sort of an internal sort of behavior of mine, and then one is a kind of an external behavior of mine. So the internal is my lack of patience and my just unwillingness to sort of put up with what I don't care for or what I don't appreciate, or um, and giving sort of more time and giving sort of more leeway, if you will, to other people. And I still am not going to accept crud or some other words that sort of, I'm not going to accept stuff that just isn't so. But I do need to be more patient. The other thing that I'm starting to work on, but have not completed by any stretch of the imagination, is sort of putting away my phone more often. Just I've realized during COVID that, and it's literally my go-to because it's just right there. And so if I want to check out for a minute, I play a game or I read some news or I, follow through social media. And while clearly there's nothing innately wrong with any of that stuff, it can be a distraction. And I've taken note for myself that it has become a distraction more than a help in my relationship with God, because it can help me to find agitation It can help me to find separateness. It can help me to lose patience. It actually advocates all that stuff. And so I need to work on it. I'm not going
Well,
to put it away,
yeah.
but I am going to use it less often.
So I wanted to ask, how do you work on patience? Like, it just seems like something that is really difficult to actually practice, because the times that you have to practice it are when you're in the moment where you're feeling impatient. Like, it just feels like one of those things that you say, I need to be more patient.
Yeah.
Okay, so I will be more patient. Like, how do you how do you actually do it?
Yeah. So I'll just give you a personal example. And by no stretch have I perfected this in any way, shape, or form, but I am working on it. And that is with regard to my kids. So I realized the way in which I sort of interacted with my son, who's now an adult, and I, in hindsight, sort of reflect on that, given how I now try to interact with my daughter. And I recognize how impatient I was with my son, and how I just didn't accept certain things, or just sort of flew off the handle over what could clearly be considered minor things. And so, in relationship with my daughter, what I've tried to do is just when I feel myself doing that, I literally breathe, I pause, I reflect, and then I try to answer, rather than just flying off the handle and yelling and screaming or whatever. And um, I've noticed when I do it, and notice I don't do it every time, but when I do it, it's helpful. It's helpful to the relationship. It's helpful to the communication. It's helpful to even achieving what I would desire for us to achieve and whatever that is going on. And so when I practice it, and that's the way I think I practice it, I breathe, I reflect, I pause before I interface, and it helps. So that's how I'm trying it. Not in every relationship, though.
Yeah, you could have a little more patience with me, is the point I'm
Yeah,
getting at.
yeah,
No, I'm just kidding. So can you share a personal story of what transformation through Christ actually looks like?
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm very fortunate as a pastor to experience this in my living, right? In my profession, in my personal life. And so, golly, it was kind of hard to condense down to one, but one that did come to mind was a guy named Mike, and he's from a previous church. Mike was kind of a rough living guy. He'd had kind of a bad growing up. He'd stepped into some bad behaviors. He'd had kind of bad luck most of his life. He was rough around the edges, both in terms of lack of education and in terms of how he interfaced with people. Uh, Great guy. He started coming to church. Somebody had invited him. He started kind of getting involved with some of the activities. And then at one point, he literally just walked down the aisle and made a faith commitment. And it was it was unsolicited to the degree that the message that I had preached didn't say, hey, come down when we're done here or anything. But we did offer what used to be known as the invitation, right? At the end of the service, you would say, hey, anybody wants to join the church or whatever, come on down. He didn't come down to join the church. He came down to say, I want to make a statement of faith. I want to follow Jesus. I want to have him um, kind of be the boss of my life, if you will. Those are not his words, but that's what I call it. And what I began to take note of Mike over the next many months and certainly years, because it was a couple of more years after that before I left. Man, Mike's the way he talked, the way he interfaced with people, the way he became more gentle, the way he became more kind, the way he literally loved people more than he did before. It wasn't that he was an unkind person, but just he began to offer tangible signs of love to people that just were very gracious and kind. And so I witnessed in him a literal kind of transformation in terms of how he interfaced with folks, and um, what he began to understand. And what I took note about Mike as well was um, he needed, and I believe this is true for all of us, but he was a great example. He needed to belong, i.e., participate, be in stuff before he believed. And I think we've often in the church gotten it wrong, that we feel like people need to believe before they belong. And he was just a great example for me that, man, I think in our humanness, We need to own that people have got to feel as though they belong to something, whether it's the church in general or just a small group within the church or whatever. But we need to feel as though we belong. And a part of belonging, of course, means that you give me worth and value, and you kind of, believe in me, if you will. And then through that, I begin to see, man, there must be something to this faith deal. And there must be something about what these people are talking about. And then I can come to believe because I have belonged. And he was a great example of that for me. Really powerful.
Yeah, I think that Jesus made a point of helping people belong who felt like they didn't belong anywhere,
Right.
finding a place for them to belong with no strings attached.
Yeah.
And we are so bad about having strings attached to the church.
Yeah. And so it's been my goal here at Treach, as you well know, one of our values is radical love. And to me, that's one of the ways that's lived out, not just at Treach, but in any way, is that we need to help people know that they are people of worth and value, that they belong no matter what, that they can participate no matter what. And to me, that's radical love, because it also implies we love you, right? We love who you are as a child of God, a creation of God. And I'm convinced that's what helps transform people to then maybe want to follow this guy named Jesus, believe in his teachings, because they've seen it lived out in a tangible way. Yeah.
Good stuff. Well, that is all we have time for today on Go Beyond. But as always, remember, y'all can catch previous episodes at tmumc.org/go beyond. And we will be back again on Monday for more conversation about our final week of our worship series, New, where we are talking about what do we need to start doing. We've already done what do we need to stop, what do we need to change, but what are the things that we need to start as we continue through this new year together.